I didn't expect to have anything in common with Jack D beyond a love of West Sussex. I live there, and he has a holiday home in Chichester. Like many BS, I have a second home in the country, as he memorably puts it. After all, Hess a 60-year-old intemperate funny man with an inveterate sardonic scowl, and I'm not. But when we discussed his new book, a spoof on the trashier end of the self-help industry, I found myself agreeing with every darned word the award-winning comedian and host of the Radio 4 panel show I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue had to say about cancel culture and woke affairs. The new fashion for self-obsession is where we are going, says Jack, disdainfully. People's humor and their humanity are being swept aside in order to accommodate very extreme views that don't fit anyone's perception of what life is really about or how we conduct ourselves. The saddest part is that we are in danger of losing touch with our sense of humor. Humor is an incredibly important social tool. We need to be able to laugh at ourselves and with each other. Without that, the world becomes a dark place. And it's not only humor that suffers. Jack, who is surprisingly earnest, suggests much more is at stake. One of the most dangerous areas seems to be an emphasis on what to think, not how to think. If you have the wrong view, there is a growing sense that you are in some way someone who needs to be repressed. The recent crop of cancel culture stories includes Professor Kathleen Stock, who was hounded out of her job at the University of Sussex after her views on women-only spaces were deemed transphobic, and the decision by Oxfam to ditch a bingo game celebrating inspirational women including J.K. Rowling, after trans staff at the charity reportedly complained. The Harry Potter author has faced a backlash after she questioned the idea that trans women are identical to biological women. There are also comedians out there having a difficult time, being cancelled and barred from different venues for not holding the very orthodox, politically correct views, says Jack, who is trying to work out from where this intolerance has emerged. Because by nature people are tolerant, we have tolerated intolerance, and ultimately perhaps that's created the problem, he muses. Together, we wonder for a moment if this is how it happens once you hit your middle years. You find yourself out of step with the prevailing attitudes and begin to sound increasingly like Victor Meldrew, however determined you had been that this was never going to happen to you. But, joking aside, Jack is concerned something very grave indeed is going on and that what we are witnessing is nothing less than the gathering evolution of an oppressive era reminiscent of George Orwell's 1984. Jack has recently been listening to the audio version. In the classic dystopian novel, the expression of any concept not in line with current orthodoxy is viewed as heretical. For a long time I felt him not going to be one of those old people saying the world is going to hell in a handcart and nothing is as good as it was, he explains. Then, several years ago, I started to feel different. It is different, and for the first time in my life people are being persecuted in this country for what are otherwise mainstream views. This is a cause for real worry, and it should be a wake-up call. He fears identity politics are becoming increasingly more controversial and confrontational. This is causing problems for people in a wide circle. We are seeing academics being cancelled for writing something in a book that transgresses a certain view, he says. I'm so disillusioned. It seems that either you believe the whole dogma or you're not with us and are basically viewed as an evil person. Everyone needs to be aware this is happening. Jack isn't too concerned about being cancelled himself. "I'm generally not worried about offending people," he says. "I'm more worried about offending for the wrong reasons. If I'm going to offend someone, I want to do it with intention. There are some hills you'll die on, others I can't be bothered about. It's a shame you have to be so careful, but there is nothing I'd hold back on. I'm just that bit more considered." We are talking about these big, quite unfunny issues because during lockdown the thwarted stand-up took his wit and pith to the printed page. Faced with the sudden cancellation of a huge nationwide stand-up tour after only 10 dates, Jack was still refining the material and then stopped himself, and his long-suffering wife Jane, with whom he has 4 grown-up children, going round the twist, due to his restless mind, by writing the book. "I had been proposed the previous year by a publisher but had turned it down then due to lack of time. It ended up saving his sanity. The idea was a spoof self-help book in which Jack would answer real questions, submitted by the public, with what he rather euphemistically calls, a less touchy-feely approach to some of the stuff going on now. As it turns out, he had form in this area. I briefly had an Agony Uncle column in Loaded magazine, and I made several episodes for the BBC of a show called Help Desk where a range of people would sit on a panel with me and answer self-help questions from the audience," he explains. "It was a sort of comedy version of Question Time - if Question Time isn't enough comedy for you. Although I had been prepared to hate the book, unexpectedly I found I loved it." Jack's alter ego is straight-talking, non-woke, takes no prisoners, old-school blunt. For example, to a reader wanting to know how to deal with conspiracy theorists, he suggests treating everything they say as a joke. "There is no point in applying rational argument to something fundamentally irrational," he points out. When the publisher invited members of the public to upload questions for possible inclusion in the book, they produced a legal disclaimer with a caveat, in bold type, that read, "If you require professional advice or assistance in relation to any issues raised in your question, you should contact a qualified practitioner." This was wise. Too often today the emphasis in psychotherapy is in providing clients with a metaphorical hug when what they so clearly need is a good slap, writes Jack in the introduction. As a consumer of self-help books, Hess unimpressed by the therapy light end of the spectrum but was careful to avoid discussing more serious issues. "Some questions I received were not appropriate for the comedy pen, things such as self-harm," he explains, aware of the fine line between amusing and offending. So the book deals with perennial problems such as relatives at Christmas, or being stuck with one's partner all day long. Jack's advice on the latter being, perhaps a sensible way forward would be for all those now disused offices to be reconfigured into comfortable proxy homes where people can go every day because their partners have taken over their actual home and filled it with flip charts. The challenge of writing a funny book for a man used to orchestrating a live audience was the disorientating lack of instantaneous feedback on his material. "I had to rely on instinct," he admits. "With stand-up, if I have an idea I can try it out later that night." Writing the book, I was worried that perhaps I was going completely mad on my own in my office. I had to wait a lot longer for a laugh. But Jack remains determined to import some humor into the way we tackle our own struggles. "The way we talk about mental health has become quite dementing," he suggests. "Nothing can be put down to stress, anxiety or feeling low anymore. There is nothing wrong in saying, "I'm incredibly stressed at the moment and I need a break," but now it all has to be labeled as a mental health issue. This normalizes mental illness, which is incredibly dangerous because real mental illness is such a serious topic. When did it become fashionable to be bipolar? By self-diagnosing in this way we risk losing our understanding of serious conditions. When Jack saw a hypnotherapist in a bid to stop smoking, he described himself as addicted. He said to me, "Why do you use that word? Why not reframe it as a bad habit, and the habit is smoking?" Habits can be broken, and it disempowered the entire dilemma not to go around with the label on. There is a danger by labeling everything as a mental health problem that we dilute the whole terminology and overlook potentially serious things. Stop asking for special treatment and labels, and get a grip is the basis of my book. We owe it to each other. What is your problem? By Jack D. Gorkas, £20, is out now. For free UK PNP, call Express Bookshop on 020-3176-3832 or visit expressbookshop.com. Jack will be appearing at Stratford Literary Festival on Saturday, November 13.